He's editor-in-chief of Breitbart News and a New York Times best-selling author. And on this podcast, he brings deep research, prescient analysis, and world-class guests. He's Alex Marlow, and this is The Alex Marlow Show.
I'm Alex Marlow. This is The Alex Marlow Show, and I'm glad you're here. A lot of work to be done today talking about my friend Charlie Kirk, who was assassinated just, I guess it was 5 days ago. And I have been making a point to point out which Kubler-Ross stage of grief I am in at the beginning of the show. And today I think is a bargaining day. I'm struggling to find meaning, reaching out to others, and telling one story. I feel like that's kind of where we're at. That's what I've been doing. I've been popping up a lot of places in terms of media, some of your favorite shows, some shows that are not familiar to you. So keep looking out for me, and I'll try to keep posting clips on all my social media platforms and on the Alex Marlow Show YouTube, which is really important. If you don't subscribe to that, you get extra stuff beyond what I do on the podcast feed. So I'm an audio guy myself, but it's a visual show. We produce it in that way. So make sure you subscribe over there. Before I get into the real business of the day, I want to talk about a sponsor that I really love and believe in, and that's the International Fellowship of Christian and Jews. And I want to ask you how you've ever wondered why some people seem to experience God's favor in extraordinary ways. There's a secret hiding in plain sight throughout the scripture. God has designed a pathway to blessing that runs directly through our relationship with Israel. It's not complicated. It's not mysterious. It's actually beautifully simple. A promise found in Genesis 12, where God says, "I will bless those who bless you." The holy equation has been working for 4,000 years, from Abraham's time to today, and God rewards those who align their hearts with his heart for Israel. It's like stepping into a river of blessing that's been flowing since the beginning. When I support the International Fellowship of Christians and Jews, I'm not just giving charity. I'm plugging into God's ancient blessing system. I'm choosing to flow with his plan instead of against it. The results speak for themselves: lives transformed, families blessed, purposes fulfilled. As a Christian, we believe we've been gifted into God's family tree. Let's discover what it means to be united with his chosen people through faith. To learn more, you can go to ifcj.org. That's ifcj.org. And it feels very real now. I feel a lot of kinship between Israel and the American people these days. Prime Minister Netanyahu has been very, I would say, appropriate in his praise of my friend Charlie, who was assassinated. And I'm curious if anyone evolved any of their thinking throughout the weekend, where we're at, where we go from here, what is enraging you, what makes you feel strong and empowered. The Friday show, I walked through, I think Thursday was sort of my tribute to Charlie, just my more raw emotional tribute. And then Friday's show, I started to talk about where we go from here. And I had laid out basically 8 premises in the show. I didn't do it quite literally this clearly, but I'll do it again now. We need to march for Charlie and against Trantifa terror. That's the coalescence of radical trans activists and Antifa activists online. Should do that on Washington. We need more prayer. We need more Bible. We need this all the time. Public places, private places. We need to get past this thing where we act as though there is to pray in public is a state-sponsored religion. No, it's not. Or it's an infringement on your religious rights if we express our Christian beliefs or our Judeo-Christian beliefs or our Jewish beliefs in public. It's just not. It's just not true. This was a lie that's been told to us, and it's time to stop it, because when God has left the public space, what's taken its place is this mayhem, this chaos. That's what the furry stuff stands for. That's what all the trans stuff stands for. It's all chaos that's replaced godliness in our public life. Next up is more guns. So we know these people are demonic, and you can only protect yourself against them. You have to be prepared to defend yourself when they attack you. So we actually need more guns. This gun that was used allegedly in this assassination was one that'd be almost impossible to ban so long as the Second Amendment's in our Constitution. There's not a gun control that's going to stop these things. So what do? We need to protect ourselves with good guys with guns. So we need more safety. And I talked about this when I was being raw last week about how there's a lot of shared I think, responsibility for Charlie not being protected. It starts with the universities who've made it completely hostile for conservatives to be on campus. They've normalized the violence. They've done nothing to stand up to it. And in fact, they make it expensive on the clubs who would bring conservative speakers to their campus to bring them because they force them to pay for security. This is effectually canceling their speech. The governor of the state, the federal law enforcement, no one had any sense that this guy was getting radicalized online. He was completely off their radar. And there's a lot of speech online. You can't police it all. I don't want to be unrealistic in these hopes, but I do feel like we should start making a broader effort to try to see what's going on these radical online platforms, because we are getting these extremely online assassins. I said that the trans monster who mowed down children as they prayed a couple weeks ago was an extremely online killer. Obviously, this individual, if the evidence proves to be true, the suspect in the Charlie Kirk murder, it was an extremely online person. And I was just talking to someone today, I think it was Tommy Lahren. I was talking to, or maybe it was Link Lauren on Megyn Kelly's network. But one of the interviews I was doing earlier, the host mentioned that Thomas Crooks, the guy who nearly killed President Trump, extremely online. It feels like the online radicalization is what's replaced a lot of people's meaning that was formerly found in God and community in our lives. But so long as that's the case, we need more safety for our speakers. Bulletproof glass, drone surveillance. That's where it's got to go. Number 5, we need more firings. I'll talk more about this throughout the show today. But the best grassroots peaceful protest that I've seen in ages is taking place right now. And if those of you who are confused by this, it is free speech to behave like a ghoul online. It is also free speech for us to vocalize to your employers that we don't believe celebrating someone's murder because they had ideas that you didn't like is acceptable for polite American society. You're free to express those beliefs so long as you're not encouraging violence and fomenting violence. You're free to say stuff. But we're also free to encourage your employers to make you unemployable. We need to have more standards in this country. Free speech is not just a license for us to tolerate the worst behavior imaginable as a public. So we need to stop that, and we're going to stop it. All right, number 6, designate Antifa a domestic terror organization. And I want to add to this. I was talking about this last week, but I want to add to it. You might need to add a trans component to it because it's really Trantifa terror now. It's not just Antifa, it's Trantifa. It is because we're now seeing a pattern where the violent people are in the trans community, or I would say this is a trans ally. And so it's not all trans people, but clearly there's a pattern that these people have deep mental health issues. They have a lot of rage issues, a lot of anger issues, and they are unmoored from what should be the basic tenets of functioning in polite society. You could have seen it with all of the drag queen story hours for children when the trans were twerking on the kids. I mean, wasn't that the dead giveaway that there's a demonic force within this movement? So again, I'm not speaking on every single individual, but I'm talking about a widespread pattern that needs to be taken seriously. But start with the Antifa, domestic terrorism. We had to fund the universities. Another obvious one is number 7. And number 8, I call for an exorcism. We take this seriously, guys. Take this seriously. There's a demonic presence. I stated it weeks ago. I stated it after the trans murderer slaughtered children as they prayed, and Democrats mocked the children, especially Gavin Newsom, and tried to make the trans murderer the victim. That was very clearer than ever when the Ukrainian refugee who had fled war to come to America for freedom was slaughtered on an American public transit system while no one helped. Everyone stood around, did nothing. And then people in mainstream outlets, mainstream fixtures in liberal media and liberal politics got to microphones to act as though the killer was actually the victim, someone who was hurting. Van Jones on CNN in particular, but he wasn't alone. So there's a demonic force that is filling that void that God should be filling in our lives. And I think that's it's a great way to honor Charlie. I think it's a great way to direct attention to it. I'm very pleased with the general reaction and outpouring of love and support for Charlie and what he stood for that's happening throughout the world. We saw demonstrations for Charlie in England over the weekend. We saw a country concert in Canada where everyone held a full stadium full of people. I think it was a Morgan Wallen concert, holding up their phones and putting their camera lights on like they were candles for Charlie. We saw a pretty remarkable vigil at the Kennedy Center in Washington, D.C. yesterday. I watched the whole thing. I loved parts of it. I thought that Speaker Mike Johnson gave an amazing speech. And I'll tell you this, when they started off the prayer vigil and the first person they brought up was the Speaker of the House of Representatives, who's a Republican politician, I was skeptical. I didn't think that, I didn't know if that's how I want Charlie's life framed right away, to rush straight to the political. But Speaker Johnson's a man of deep faith, and he gave a brilliant speech. It was beautiful. And he really did weave in all the themes that Charlie talks about in terms of faith, politics, and family, all of it being intertwined. It was fantastic. And the speeches got, I wouldn't say they got better, but they were terrific, top to bottom. My favorite line of the night was from Tulsi Gabbard, who said that the attack on Charlie was the definition of terrorism. I like that because that starts opening up people who encourage it, who are part of it, to consequences. And that's really what we need. We need more consequences. And her suggesting that suggests that perhaps there could be some legal impetus to make change. And we need to move fast, because if Charlie will have died in vain unless we make immediate progress right now. And we should thank God that it's Donald Trump and J.D. Vance in charge, and not Barack Obama, Kamala Harris, Joe Biden, who wouldn't have lifted a finger. They would have only divided the country more. Speaking of Vice President Vance, he hosted Charlie Kirk's radio show today. I got some of it. It was awesome. All basically White House guests, but the top, most powerful people in the world joining in for my former colleague Charlie's show in his honor. I saw that the numbers on X, the Everything app, the people streaming it were just through the roof, like at least double what a normal show would be. So it's a fantastic idea, whoever came up with that. And I've watched some of it. I'll probably watch it all later. But good stuff. But I definitely recommend you check that out. I think that's a fantastic thing that was done. I feel like I should at this point give any specific information that we've got, which is new. So the FBI, according to the Washington Free Beacon, is investigating social media accounts that appear to indicate foreknowledge of the Kirk assassination. This is obvious, and it's good that it's going to be discussed. There's also a huge lament I have here, in that it is apparent that we could have spotted this guy somewhere. And I don't know what the resources are in the FBI and their ability to monitor these things. But we know that there's a lot of people with a lot of resources that spend a lot of money in our government for nothing. All the climate change stuff comes to mind, all the DEI stuff, the entire Department of Education, most of the EPA. I mean, most of this stuff is just not necessary. And we have so much bloat. I mean, the deep state itself, Department of Justice is 100,000 offices, I think. Is that right? Or is that 100,000 people at least? 100,000 people at least. It's the 100,000 offices sounds like a lot, but there are so many people in our government. It's just so many. It's the number one employer in the country. Shouldn't we have people monitoring some of these forums? There's a chilling story from a classmate that I saw of the alleged assassin, who said that he was a Reddit kid. And which means someone who just hangs out online. It's not just Reddit, it's Discord, it's elsewhere. But these forums, while legal, they can't be places where people are radicalizing into terror on our watch. We're letting them do it, and we're not even keeping an eye on them. So I'm glad the FBI is on it now. But to be frank, they should have been on it before. And I'm not blaming the people who are there. They just got there. So I'm not trying to blame. I'm trying to say, let's be better. So he joked on Discord that his doppelganger committed the murder after the fact, according to a report. So he immediately went online to see if he was getting congratulated. I said this too, this is very dark, but it's a point that you got to make. This person would not have pulled the trigger and murdered my friend in front of his family if he did not feel like he was going to get congratulated online. And so every time you're seeing someone justifying it, someone saying, hopefully this chills out conservatives, making some sort of equivocation about whether or not Charlie's speech was acceptable, then just know that that's exactly what the killer was hoping you would do. He was hoping you would be online defending him, championing him, making him the next Luigi. So Kash Patel said this morning on a Fox News interview, the suspect claimed he had an opportunity to take out Charlie Kirk. So that shows the premeditation. And the FBI confirmed that DNA found in the sniper's nest was matched the alleged suspect or the suspect. I only say this because I don't want to ruin a trial. We know where we're at. So all of you can read between the lines there. So, it looks like we got him. But it's noteworthy that at the end of Friday, and it feels too long ago to opine on it, some of it I posted to my social, but we got a couple of things that were becoming clear to us by the end of the day Friday. First of all, Erica Kirk is a superstar. Charlie's wife, who I've had the good fortune of meeting a couple of times. I don't know her well, not a fraction as well as I know Charlie. I got to meet her a couple of times. I did encourage them to get married and have children. I did do that. So I'm happy to have said that. I don't think I made a big difference. I don't know. But I did I did say, oh, no, do it. It'll be great. Get on it. You guys have a great time. I don't think they need any convincing, but I'm happy to have said it when I had the chance. And but she was just a sensational speech, so raw, so emotive. But the lines in the speech were just, they had to be heard to be believed. But in particular, her isolating the fact that the evildoers responsible for Charlie's assassination have no idea what they have done. The plural, the emphasis on the plural. She knew it's not just one guy. And we're going to learn the extent if there was a conspiracy, I hope. I don't know if I trust federal law enforcement to figure it out, but I know they're going to try. And I hope they do. But there's so many weird things that happen. Is that he jumps off the roof. It doesn't look like he's got the gun anymore. Where was the gun at that point? Had he thrown the gun? I don't know. Please explain it to us. He took the shot at a moment where there's a question about trans violence. Could he hear? I don't know if he could hear. Would someone explain that to me? We learned from reporter Brooke Singman, not from the FBI. Brooke Singman, who works at Fox News, who I nearly hired, who's a great reporter. I tried to hire her a while back. It didn't quite work out, but hopefully, I don't know, maybe I can work with her one day soon, but she's a great reporter. She was the one who originally reported that the shooter was living with a trans boyfriend, girlfriend, whatever, who's a furry, which is an obscure fetish that's probably mostly live action role play. I can't imagine that's a real thing online. Maybe it is. But we've seen this stuff pop up before. It's about online attention seeking for lost people who've way too much time on their hands. People should be at church or volunteering or at work, probably. So, but she sees there's radicalization. And then everyone saw the video of the kid getting up and cheering and screaming and looking back towards the assassin right after Charlie got shot. So I don't know what coordination was within the audience. It certainly looks like there was. It looks like there was coordination in the audience. So maybe there wasn't. I'd like to know. And you can explain it to me at the FBI, and I will convey it to my vast audience, and at Breitbart.com. So there's just too many questions here that are not answered. We'll get into some of those. But back to her speech, which was, she also said that Charlie's top political priority, so if he ran for office, what he would have done is to try to revive the American family. And I give Charlie so much credit for this because the guy was so busy, it boggles the mind. I'm an incredibly busy person, and I criticize myself sometimes privately to myself for being too busy and thinking maybe I should not take on every responsibility that comes my way. Charlie crammed in way more in a day than I would, and he had all these tricks to do so. And I'll get to some of them on a less intense news day. But there's so many lessons that he had for people about efficiency and the way they would use their time. But the fact that he could take over all of these industries while he's taking them over and still have time for a family and to have children, and he would keep the Sabbath, which everyone's going to talk about a lot because apparently Charlie was working on a book on this. So they're going to have to try to release it. I mean, I can't imagine the book was done, but I mean, they're going to have to try to release his book that Charlie was working on, arguing that you need to take a day off every week, but a legit day off. So cell phone detox. So, I mean, her speech talking about how family brings heaven into earth. So good. It clearly deeply political. I'm sorry, not deeply political, deeply religious and apolitical, the nature of the speech. But noting that our world is filled with evil, yet God is good, and she got to experience that through marriage and building a family with Charlie is amazing. And then all the battle cry stuff is amazing too. So we had all that. And then we learned that the FBI had basically, we don't know if they did anything. So, and there's no disrespect to Cash. I'm not trying to. That's not the point. I like Cash. I like Dan. But we learned that the dad just turned him in. So I don't really know what the FBI did. I don't know if they did anything. And I would like to give him credit if I can. And Trump's out there saying the FBI did great and we love the FBI. But he's got to say that. So that's how the weekend started. And then I mentioned some of those tributes at concerts and things like that, even mainstream people like Chris Martin from Coldplay, seemed like a lefty. He was out there saying, praying for Charlie. That's good. All but 5 NFL teams, I think, honored Charlie in some way. All but 5, moment of silence, which is, I wish it was 100%, but it's pretty good considering where we were. It would have been unthinkable. It would have been unthinkable to have a moment of silence for a Charlie Kirk just a couple of years ago. And that was a lot of Charlie's work that made that possible, because he was the one who was reaching all these people in the culture because of his prominence on Instagram and TikTok, et cetera. His ability to do that was, I think, part of it was reaching athletes. I think it was reaching people who don't really get a lot of news, probably. I'm guessing they're probably not sitting around necessarily refreshing the Breitbart app as you guys should every day. I'm sure a bunch of them have it, but I think they're all doing it. I think a lot of them on Instagram, TikTok. And who are they seeing? There's very few conservatives that are over there. And Charlie's over there, maybe the loudest. So that was very positive. The spontaneous vigils, the way people are demonstrating, the data point that is just so awesome is that Turning Point USA had 4,000 chapters, which is a lot of chapters. That's a lot of chapters. 4,000 chapters when Charlie was assassinated 5 days ago. They reported over the weekend that they've had 32,000 requests for new chapters. So this thing is going to be huge. It's going to be international. The money is only going to increase. It's not going to dry up. And there's countless people who were already inspired by Charlie, and now there's going to be people who are going to be even more so. There's going to be new people. There's going to be people who had maybe fallen away from some of the stuff Charlie was standing for and will come back into the fray. So it's going to be sensational, and I just can't wait. I can't wait for it. But I will spend some time on some darker things that are out there. And there's 2 modes of darkness that I want to say. There's there's 2 veins. There's the overt, congratulatory, celebratory, Charlie deserved it stuff that we have seen. And that's big. But I also, I want to do a warning here. I want you to take something back to your lives, which is that almost as bad, equally as bad to me. To be honest, it's not equal, but it's equally as dangerous that people who feel compelled to state that, well, Charlie said some controversial things, and I don't want to get into politics, and Charlie may have said something you don't agree with. Anyone who starts a praise or a tribute to Charlie with something like that is suffering from a deep lack of moral clarity. You don't need to say that stuff. We don't agree with our spouses all the time. We don't agree with our literal brothers and sisters all the time. We don't agree with the decisions of our CEOs and our managers and our companies all the time. The nature of human experience is you are unique. No one agrees with you all the time. That's why we defend to the death your right to say things in a country that defends free speech and believes in free speech. And so anyone who is trying to act as though Charlie provoked onto himself this assassination is completely lacking in the understanding that our gift to be able to speak freely in this country does not come from man, it comes from God himself. And yet that's exactly what I witnessed both online and in a personal level. I'll tell you a personal story. So we went to a church on Sunday. We didn't go to our usual church. So I'm Catholic, and as I've talked about many times on the show, it's a struggle when you have small children because there's nothing for them in the Catholic Church. And I'm going to be much more vocal about pointing this out. I've pointed out many times, but I need to be louder and angrier about it. The Catholic Church provides nothing for small children at Mass. And it is something that I've been a weekly churchgoer since I was a teenager. And there's nothing for small kids. If you're lucky, you'll find a church with a room or some sort of a partition up so that you feel like if the kids make some noise, then you're not disturbing everyone. but there's not really anything for them. So we went to a church, which is a more of an evangelical, sort of generic Christian church in my neighborhood. Really nice people who go there. But they have 4 separate different youth groups that meet during the service. So we did that so that the children could get something enriching for them, tailored for them, while mom and dad sat in for the service. And I'll tell you, this pastor, he prayed for Charlie, which is better than, I don't know, I guess I would have expected a few years ago. But it was nonstop, 50 times, doing the stupid equivocation with the murderers. Well, he said some stuff that you might not have agreed with. And I don't want to talk about his politics today. And his politics are not relevant today. And the fact that he said some things that some of you might find deeply offensive today, over and over and over again. We get it. We get it, genius. We get it. What are you trying to tell us? You're trying to reason and bargain with people who are pro-assassination. You're bargaining with people who believe that someone had a right to take out Charlie because he said stuff that offended them. You have a right to be offended. You do not have a right to shoot people in the throat when you are. Is that not fundamental? Is that not understood? And why can't people be bold enough in that statement? And there are a few liberals who are. There are a few, but it's not enough. It should be everyone. Every single person in this country. This is not a hard one. We don't do political violence in America. We defend people's free speech, and the best way to beat free speech is with more speech. It's not with shooting people in the throat while they sit down and talk to young adults. On a campus of all places, where it's supposed to be a place where thought grows, where we add stuff to the realm of what we consider thought and intellect. It was infuriating, and it was infuriating because it was lame, not because it was evil, because it was lame. It was not declarative. It was not muscular. It was not strong enough. And that's what we need right now. We need people to be strong and to be tough. We are in a spiritual war against evil at this time. So, and a lot of people are acting as though that this is anything other than a tectonic event that demands a complete reset on how we approach dialogue in our country with one another across aisles. Then I don't have time for you. I really don't. And you need to demand the people who are leading your churches or temples that they behave the same way. Now, I'll tell you, I'll go to Catholic church next week just to see, as usual. That's my usual. But they don't do anything any better. They're terrible on this stuff. They assiduously avoid politics. Do I love the tradition of the Mass? I love the sacraments. But they don't look out for the kids, and they're so apolitical to a fault. It's not political to say that Charlie Kirk should not have been assassinated on video in front of his families. I'll tell you, Erica Kirk posted some pretty tasteful images of a wake for Charlie. It didn't show his face, but showed his hands and him lying in the casket. Some people mourning him. And a lot of messages of people saying it was inappropriate or uncouth or something. And I couldn't help but think about how my whole feed online for a day and a half was video footage of my friend getting murdered and having blood spurt out of his neck on camera while the life was drained from his body in front of his family. And then I got people texting me, I don't know about this. She's posting things. You're not supposed to post pictures of a wake. So we're only supposed to have the filth and the hatred. We're only supposed to have the murder. That's all we're supposed to remember in terms of imagery around this event. We can't have something beautiful and holy and godly. We need a fundamental reset of what's going on, and that all has to do with the internet. And you can try to drop off the grid. More power to you if you can do it. But it's not realistic. What's realistic is the internet's here, and we're going to have a relationship with it. And we need to try to engage with it in a way that's productive. And that is going to involve us rethinking certain things, because it becomes this abstraction when you see someone getting killed, the life being drained from his body, on a phone, you're scrolling and there it is. It's not good for the soul. And so we need to counter it with something. You counter it with God. That's what you counter it with. There's no other way. There's nothing else. I want to share with you some of the stuff that's going on online that we gathered. New York Times platformed a guy named Hassan Piker, who is a left-wing streamer, very left-wing popular guy, a true provocateur. This is how he talks about people with whom he disagrees. Check this out.
Kill them. Kill those motherfuckers and murder those motherfuckers in the street. Let the streets soak in their fucking red capitalist bloods, dude.
He's also a guy who lives in $1 million house, makes a lot of money. New York Times gave him a column. I was supposed to debate Charlie Kirk. Here's what I would have said. So the New York Times, which won't platform people with conservative viewpoints, normative conservative viewpoints on their editorial pages, they platform a guy like that to talk about Charlie specifically. So they were going to debate, I guess. They've debated in the past. And it's one of these things where I don't know how literal he's being. I don't know whether to take him seriously or literally or not. I've watched a lot of his content over the years, but I'm not like a regular consumer of it. I don't know how sincere he is, but I'll tell you, he comes off as sincere to a lot of people. Here is this pastor, forget his name, but this one's been going around a lot that you guys have probably heard, talking about how to respond appropriately to Charlie. This is from the pulpit. Check this out.
Charlie Kirk did not deserve to be assassinated. But I'm overwhelmed seeing the flags of the United States of America at half-staff calling this nation to honor and venerate a man who was an unapologetic racist and spent all of his life sowing seeds of division and hate into this land. And hearing people with selective rage who were mad about Charlie Kirk but didn't give a damn about Melissa Hortman and her husband when they were shot down in their home, tell me I ought to have compassion for the death of a man who had no respect for my own life. I am sorry, but there's nowhere in Bible where we are taught to honor evil.
So that's the interpretation of Charlie. He's evil. Melissa Hortman was that Minnesota lawmaker who was state representative who was murdered. I don't see any. We could take on that case at a different time, but to act as though it's an outrage to honor Charlie, who was trying to bring Judeo-Christian values to campuses, and to call him evil and have such rage in your heart, and to use the Bible, to use the church to bring that. I mean, that's the definition of carrying the Lord's name in vain. Taking the Lord's name in vain. People miss this sometimes. It's not just that you're not supposed to say God damn, which is off-putting. You shouldn't say it. But it's really about trying to act as though you speak for God on behalf of God when you don't. And that's what happens with this, is that this guy's out there. He's from a church podium to announce that Charlie Kirk is evil. He doesn't know anything about Charlie. An outrage that people show support for him. It is divisive. And yet you will see repeatedly throughout the days and weeks to come of people announcing that we're the ones who are divisive because we don't want to unify with people who are hunting us down and are trying to kill us. It is a common thing that you're going to see people on the left get mad at President Trump because Trump is calling some people scum. Josh Shapiro, who is going to be one of the front runners for president for the Democrats, one of the few moderate voices left in Democrat politics at all, but he's mad at Trump because Trump called some leftist scum after the Kirk assassination. That's where their heads are at. They forget the way Joe Biden had that rage speech where he was speaking in front of that red background. You guys remember that? They forget about how Barack Obama acted after Trayvon Martin was shot, where when he could have said there's no evidence this had to do with race. This was a fight that broke out between George Zimmerman, who's not a white guy, and Trayvon, and then Trayvon got shot during the process. It was not something where there was some sort of targeted racial violence. George Zimmerman was a brown-skinned man, and there's a fight that took place, and George Zimmerman, the back of his skull was ripped up because Trayvon was fighting against him. So there's no evidence that there was racism at all. And instead, Barack Obama comes out and says, if I had a son, he would have looked like Trayvon. That's how he dealt with it. So they're the least unifying people on the planet. And what's more, you can't unify with people who are either wanting to shoot you down, are trying to shoot you down, or are acting like that's not exactly what's happening. And that's the problem why some of this weakness that I'm seeing from people from our churches and from our elected leaders, in some cases, we need strength. We need people to be affirmative and declarative in their beliefs. Here's an example of what I'm talking about. Here is James Lankford, Oklahoma senator, one of the weakest Republicans in the whole Senate. Check this out.
Well, I would say if there's someone preparing to be able to take out an aggressive act against someone or to be able to violate the law, that is the role of law enforcement, to be able to protect Americans. We need to be careful in how we talk about this, whether it is talking about white nationalists and preparing to be able to attack and to be able to carry an attack, or to somebody like a Timothy McVeigh that hated the government intensely and in my state 30 years ago, murdered 168 people in Oklahoma City, or whether it is a leftist group that is.
So it could be the white nationalists. Like they just do this thing where they grow. What are the white nationalists? Are they sitting there parked up on rooftops on university campuses just trying to mow people down? Where's the pattern of this that he's talking about? You don't have to do it. Jim Garrity, who's a writer at the National Review, or at least he was. That's where I know him from. Maybe he's somewhere else. But he's got something called the 3 Martini Lunch podcast. And he discussed, and he volunteered this for some reason on his X page. If somebody posts something abominable or hateful on social media after a tragedy, his employer doesn't necessarily need to fire that employee. But the employer really should have some sort of intervention, some sort of action that says to the employee, don't do this. It's not good for the company. It makes us all look bad. It really isn't good for you. So just some sort of pop therapy session. Just some sort of a pop-up, like sit down and maybe I can rub your back and have a hug with you. Even though you're supporting pure evil in our midst, in our country. Now that's the job of the employer. It's not to do what's best for the business, full stop. It's maybe to try to just give a nice hug to the person who's condoning evil. That's what I'm saying. There's a weakness in certain circles of conservatism and in Christianity itself. I want to be really careful about this. There's a banality to the evil on the left as well. Here's Peter Baker, who's the top White House reporter for the New York Times and has been forever sort of a legendary Washington reporter. Check this one.
Political ecosystem. Yeah. So Charlie Kirk was a 31-year-old, we call him influencer, I guess, these days. Provocateur would be another word. He out there galvanizing young voters, particularly on the right, to support Trump. He actually was not originally a Trump supporter, but became one of his most fervent.
That's not unusual.
That's not unusual in modern conservative politics. But at age 31, he had become, a pretty significant force in young people's politics. And he became a friend not only of Trump, but Donald Trump Jr., J.D. Vance in particular. J.D. Vance was so moved by this event that he ripped up the schedule, flew out to Utah to personally have the casket brought home on Air Force Two to Arizona. So even though Charlie Kirk held no office, never ran for office, had no position of power or authority in the traditional sense, he had obviously a network of people who he influenced. Now, he said a lot of things that got a lot of people riled up, right? And that's part of his style. about race, about gender, about affirmative action and Islam and things like that. But he also enjoyed going to college campuses like the one he was at, even though he knew an audience there might include people who didn't agree with him, and he liked to mix it up. And he's become in this last few days, I think, a symbol of the toxic culture that we're in right now, in politics.
Unspeakable. I could have interrupted at any point. I could have interrupted at any point. I could have interrupted at any point. Can you imagine if I did a broadcast like that for like 5 seconds? I mean, how do these people get on TV? This is Washington Week with The Atlantic. Jeffrey Goldberg is the host. He's one of Laureen Powell Jobs' stooges, and the woman in between the two of them, you can see, is Susan Glasser, who's Peter Baker's wife, who's another really far left reporter. I think she was at Politico for a while. I have no idea what she's doing now, but I had one interaction with her. It was, she seemed like an idiot. So when I was interacting with her, so that's their show. And I guess some people get this as a show, but Charlie's a provocateur. He's a symbol of toxic hate. It's all of this is saying that, yeah, maybe you had it coming. That's what this is about. So all of this is to suggest that's what this is about. He had it coming. Here's Howard Kurtz, who's about to leave Fox. I think he lost his media show on Fox, but he was talking about it too. He's a liberal guy, not a leftist, but a liberal guy. Howard Kurtz on Fox. Check this out.
Charlie Kirk was not a saint. He said 2 years ago, it's worth to have a cost of, unfortunately, some gun deaths every single year so we can have the Second Amendment. But his murder makes us feel like a very dangerous time.
Okay, so another almost impossible clip. First of all, no one's a saint. How many saints are there? We said a canonization last week, and it was a guy who'd been dead for 20 years. I mean, who among us is a living saint? Charlie would tell you he's not a saint. There's countless clips of Charlie saying he's not a saint. So why do you feel the need to do this? Why does everyone feel the need to announce that he's not a perfect person? Charlie doesn't walk on water. I just don't understand this impulse that dwells in people's hearts. And then he says, because Charlie thought the Second Amendment was worth it. Yes, if there were people who were exercising their Second Amendment rights who had a beat on that guy while he was sitting there up on that roof and would have taken him out, Charlie would have been very happy with the Second Amendment in that case, that they had guns. So it's not a smart point. It's not an intelligent point. And this is where things get very frustrating and maddening, is when the discussion gets idiotic. A lot of people have very idiotic discussions that are taking place, and a lot of them because they're weak. And the weakness is what's important. Peter Baker tweets, while other presidents typically try to lower the temperature in moments of national crisis, Trump turns up the flames. Joe Biden sold the nation's speech with the red background and the armed guards behind him. I mean, how many examples of this do we need to know to hear that it is the left is the one that's trying to divide all of us? And they continue to. The Rock's daughter has made statements that are, I guess, condoned Charlie Kirk's assassination to some degree. If you want people to have kind words when you pass, you should say kind things when you're alive. So The Rock's a big fraud. But it's like is she a wrestler too? I think she is. But World Wrestling? I mean, that's all conservative males, right? Watch that. It's mostly males, and most of them are conservatives. I'll end on a positive note for the day. It's going to be a big week. The fiery, couple positive notes. The firings continue. Longtime Washington Post columnist Karen Adia was fired for justifying the Kirk assassination. She posts, part of what keeps America so violent is the insistence that people perform care, empty goodness, and absolution for white men who espouse hatred and violence. Refusing to tear my clothes and smear ashes on my face in performative mourning for a white man that espoused violence is not the same as violence. And then she made a false quote about Charlie. So we got to watch out for this. A false Charlie quote about black women. So you got to keep an eye out, because people are going to start putting out false quotes about Charlie to try to justify him being a bad guy. We're going to go through a whole litigation of Charlie's whole life. It's not going to happen all at once. It's going to happen over time. But we're going to go through Charlie's entire life, everything he said, and people are going to try to find the most inflammatory stuff he said and use it to try to cancel his legacy. And we got to be on guard, because some of the stuff Charlie will have said, but there'll be broader context. And some of the stuff Charlie won't have said at all. It'd be completely made up. And the people who come up with the false quotes, they got to get fired. So it's a peaceful way of pushing back. By the way, the Washington Post tried to buy this woman out because she said all sorts of nasty stuff. We have lots of stuff on her at Breitbart News. But she didn't take the buyout. So it's a bad move. It's a bad move because now she's got to, it doesn't get any buyout. She's losing her job. Nancy Mace is calling on defunding schools where teachers and professors celebrate Kirk's assassination. I think someone built a database. I should report on this. I'll give a bigger report on this. I think we have something at Breitbart. Someone's building a database of all the people who are putting out hateful stuff. Good. Hold them accountable. Make them famous. It was an Andrew Breitbart expression, and Charlie Kirk adopted it, adapted it, used it over and over. We make people famous, what we're going to do. And they all deserve it, every last one of them. It's a very dangerous time, particularly if you're espousing Christian conservative beliefs in public. And we can make incremental progress by making sure that the people who engage in the worst behavior online are held to account. Not by violence. If they do something illegal, you use the law. But if we're not talking about doing something illegal, we need to hold them to a higher standard. We need to shame them and make them famous and make it so that people think twice before they espouse these horrific viewpoints. And they should be expected to do at least a basic bit of homework. That's why civic engagement matters so much. Charlie stood for faith. He stood for a family. He stood for the Bible. And he was free to debate everyone. The point that's been made maybe more than any other of the last 3 days or so is the one that's most important, which is that Charlie was not only debating, but he would invite the people who disagree with him to come up first. He wasn't just there for adulation and praise. He got plenty of that and he enjoyed it, I'm sure. But what he was really there for was to try to change people's minds, try to convince them. That's the way that this republic got built and became the strongest in the world. I wrote something, I think it was in Breaking Biden, where I talked about the alternative to free speech is much worse. And you can fill in the gaps of what I meant by that. The alternative to free speech is violence. Because when people stop talking, they start shooting at each other. Or punching, whatever it is, stabbing. But the point is, if we want to have a peaceful society, if there's any hope of a unified society, it's not going to be unified just around left-wing values, where we unify about disarming conservatives who are being hunted. We're not going to unify around not getting people fired who congratulate the murder of our friend and leader. We're not going to unify around that. But we could unify around the concept of you can agree to disagree. We can talk amongst ourselves. You can respect people's dignity and humanity and that they're born in the image of God, even if you don't like anything they have to say politically. And if we can start there, then maybe we could have some bit of unity, but we're so far off from that, and it's not the point. The point right now is to win a spiritual war against a mighty foe, a foe that is demonic in nature and has figured out exactly our pain points in this hyper online society we're in and is working on us, working on our young people, particularly young males right now while I'm speaking. All right, that's today's show. Thanks to Misty for putting it together. John Cassio is doing an amazing job pulling clips. You can find me on a lot of your favorite shows, podcasts, subscribe. I read a hilarious Breaking the Law a review today on Amazon that I will bring up. Just texting Mrs. Dr. Marlowe right away. One of the lines is, after reading the book, I suspect Jesus was talking to Alex Marlowe. Oh, wow, that's amazing. I looked at the review, 2 stars out of 5. So Jesus helped me write the book, but still only a 2-star. So, all right, but happy to have it. Happy to have the engagement. That's today's show. I hope all of you are spending some time with family, communing with faith, not being intimidated by what's going on online, and being as fired up as the people I saw in that audience at that DC vigil. We had a lot of great stuff coming up this week, and I'm looking forward to bringing in some of Charlie's friends, some experts who understand this stuff about where we go from here. So it should be hot. A lot of news. Breitbart.com as always, and I'll see you tomorrow.